We have the first with Hamay Watt. He is with Upfront Ventures and has been an entrepreneur in the TransTech space before he was also an investor. Then right next to him is Ariel Poehler. Ariel is a super angel. He is also an entrepreneur, and he also makes TransTech himself with his family, which is pretty awesome. Right next to him is James Joaquin, who's with Obvious Ventures, who are graciously sponsored this event for all of us. And he's very focused on world positive, and you're going to love what he has to say. And then at the very end of the line is Ari Yaron, who's here from Israel and who has a new firm called Joy Ventures, which is doing wonderful things in neuro wellness. And I'm so excited to have this group of people here because they all are passionate about the same things that we are, and they all have a slightly different way of looking at the space. So if you guys could each introduce yourselves and your firm and what you're excited about in TransTech.
Okay, just quickly, Hamay Watt. I'm a board partner at Upfront Ventures. Upfront is the largest venture firm in Southern California, which means nothing up here. It would probably be the smallest up here. But we just closed a $400 million fund. That's a generalist-focused fund. I'm kind of a hybrid. I'm an entrepreneur, and I spend time, obviously, investing. The company that Nichol mentioned that I started before was called BeLife, and it's now called Canary Health, focused on behavior change for chronic conditions. What else am I supposed to talk about?
And your focus in TransTech and what you
Yes,
about
my
it.
focus in TransTech, I think as a firm, we're looking at multiple deals across all industries. I personally like the TransTech space from an entrepreneurial perspective. So as you know, I'm looking at a foundry or a lab model in this space to take some of the raw technologies and try to think about how they could apply to even larger markets than they currently are applying to today.
Great, thank you.
Hi, my name is Ariel Poehler, and like Nichol mentioned, I'm an angel investor. I started my tech career as an entrepreneur back in the mid and late 90s, but for the past 15 years or so, I've been mostly working as a mentor, investor, board member. My current focus is, I describe it as human augmentation, so technologies that can take us beyond our natural capabilities. And what that means, it's probably best explained with just a few examples of the areas. One area I'm passionate about are senses, extra senses, and improving our existing senses. I'm on the board of a company called Neosensory, David Eagleman's company, for example, which uses haptics to either enhance or fix senses where people might have difficulty. I'm also really interested in improving our brain capabilities, things like TDCS and other things that we can do. I've been looking a lot at sleep and helping sleep make us perform better and be better, if you will. And a few other areas include biowearables, both in terms of monitoring and measuring ourselves, but also providing us information about how we're doing. Exoskeletons is an area that I've been looking a little bit. So anyway, I don't want to keep going on, but that should give you an idea. I think the project that Nichol mentioned, I've been exploring with my wife. I'm really interested into capturing and conveying our emotional state and leveraging technology to do that. So with my wife, we thought, wouldn't it be great if in real time, each one of us could get some kind of sense of how the other is feeling. So for example, if she could right now feel something, I was like, hey, I wonder what Ariel is doing in this moment. Something feels a little different. Maybe it's because I'm on stage. And I've also been working on a project in the hypnosis space, leveraging hypnosis to treat addictions and pain. And by the way, that I'm doing using Alexa. So.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm James Joaquin, and really excited to be here and tell you briefly about what my team and I have been up to. I'm a former tech entrepreneur, have spent a lot of years building tech companies. Ariel used to try to recruit me for CEO positions in his companies. But about 10 years ago, I crossed over to the venture capital side. But hopefully in a way that involves, love and light, not the dark side. I'm a co-founder of a firm called Obvious Ventures, and we describe ourselves as world positive venture capital. So we started this firm around a combination of inspiration and frustration. The inspiration was from my co-founders and I, Evan Williams, who built Blogger and Twitter and now Medium, Vishal Vasish, who was the Chief Strategy Officer of Patagonia and spent 11 years with Yvon Chouinard building that incredible outdoor apparel company. Some of the work that I had done in my past companies, including Zoom, a company that helps foreign-born immigrants remit money back to their home country. In all three of those cases, we found that we delivered the best financial impact for ourselves and our investors through these companies that had the biggest social or environmental impact of anything that we'd ever worked on. And we saw causality. We believed that entrepreneurs tackling the biggest systemic challenges that humanity faces are actually going to drive great financial outcomes and are going to create truly sustainable impact. And so we coined this term World Positive to describe these new kinds of startups. And our frustration was that traditional venture capital tended to view those companies negatively and say, oh, you're doing something good, you must be compromising my profits. We fundamentally disagreed. We want to turn that or to an and, where it's profit and purpose, and they feed each other in a positive flywheel. So we voted with our time and our money, and we created a purpose-built venture fund to do that. Really quickly, we invest in three big areas. The first we call sustainable systems, which is about energy and mobility and resources. Healthy living, which for us is about food and nutrition and healthcare. And then people power, which is about the future of money, the future of work, the future of learning. Thank you.
I'm the last one. Avi, with a V, thanks. Avi Aron. What should I say? At the age of 26, I was diagnosed with an inoperable brain tumor and was supposed to die. And that started my life journey. And after having a crash course in medicine that took me a year and a half and going through 4 surgeries in New York and Germany and Israel and 6 years of major suffering and learning lots of alternative medicines, and inventing the technology that saved my life and then taking it from a patent to global, and helping and saving lots of people, but realizing that most of them eventually die from the same brain tumor. So on one hand, I was very happy with my success. On the other hand, I was extremely frustrated that I really did not save people for the long term. And I understood that I would have liked to use technology not to help the diseased, but to help the healthy. And that all of us, we can trust medicine, that we will live till the age of 100 and we will all be chronically diseased. So I wanted to do something different. And I said, why don't I use the same amazing technology to create personalized, predictive, preventative medicine, right? The only issue is that medicine is not sustainable, right? It costs too much, almost 20% of the GDP, and most of it is allocated to chronic diseases, not to health. It's not going to last more than that. The typical doctor, unfortunately, is very conservative and will not be willing to adapt new technologies. So I said, okay, let's just skip the middleman and develop a new market of consumer products that can enhance the well-being of people. Okay, now we know that technology seemed to do great, right? It shortened the distances and shortened the time frames, but it also brought immense intensity into our life that is typically translated to stress. And we are stressed. We have no free time. We are stressed at work. We are stressed at home. We lack sleep. We don't really eat whatever we're supposed to eat. So, it's insane what we're doing to ourselves. And it is very difficult for us not to use all this intensive technology. So I said, okay, I would like to develop consumer products, but they need to tempt the user. right? On one hand, they must be scientifically proven to help the well-being, to reduce stress, to enhance resilience, just like medical products should. But they should also be like really fun to use, so we would be motivated to use. This is why the name is Joy Ventures, okay? Hopefully, they would not need the development of a new habit. Hopefully, they would not take extra time, thus reducing the barrier. So the first thing, the Joy Ventures, which I'm the tea maker, coffee maker, I'm the humble servant. So Joy Ventures will fund. Now, it's not a VC. It's a fund for 20 years. I think that we call it neuro wellness. This market will be probably worth hundreds of billions in 20 years. Okay, so it's more like a holding company, and we invest in entrepreneurs and technologies long term, meaning we will invest in all stages till the company becomes profitable. I believe in businesses and sustainable businesses. We support them. All of my team are successful entrepreneurs or neuro PhDs with entrepreneurial capabilities, etc. So one component is to help entrepreneurs even like accelerate, because there isn't like a significant deal flow. So help them invent the idea, incubate, and then invest as needed. Because we appreciate science and we would like to build the right foundation, we allocated half of our budget to academic research, and we support academic research in the field of neuro wellness free of charge. We do not demand anything in return, assuming that in the long term, this interdisciplined association of different disciplines in the academy, and also the mix with entrepreneurs would yield not only good knowledge, but also hopefully additional startups. So that's it, a very long introduction. Thanks. Yeah. I still don't know how to explain it in a simple way. Sorry.
Well, I know one of the things that investors do is you sort of look out over the time horizon and estimate what you think might be happening. So I would love for you guys to give us a view into the next 5 to 10 years of what you think is happening in this space, and what you would like to see happen. Like, what are the milestones that you're looking for in terms of what types of companies and what you expect to happen or hope to happen?
Specific to TransTech.
Specific to TransTech. Do you want to start, James?
I can jump in and tell you a little bit about some of the things that we've already done at Obvious, and also looking ahead. Specific to TransTech, we're really interested in reimagining what we define as healthcare. Today, the healthcare system pays people to treat illness, not reverse it. There are a lot of entities that get paid for keeping us sick, and we are looking for ways to reimagine that. One company that we are an early investor in that I think is transformational is a company called Verta Health that's built a digital therapy to reverse type 2 diabetes. Now, when these entrepreneurs started on this mission, mainstream medicine said, well, that's not possible. You can only treat type 2 diabetes. You can't reverse it. And they now have a program where I think they're up to 76% of patients in 90 days or less are getting completely off of insulin. So that's a transformative digital therapy. It's a world positive business model. They're not trying to keep you sick to keep making money, but they are a for-profit business. It fits exactly our model of profit and purpose. We think that's one of hopefully many new kinds of digital therapies. I think a theme for the next 18 months for us is around mental health, and both the kind of clinical diagnosis and digital therapies, but also the consumer wellness around this rise of anxiety, the commercialization of our attention that Silicon Valley has unfortunately created that is, creating, I think, a systemic challenge for us and our youth. we're going to need new interventions and new digital therapies to balance that and counterbalance the stress and anxiety. So that's one big area that we're doing a lot of work in.
Great, thank you.
You know, I'm excited about the transition from mental health to brain health. I think just the nomenclature can make a huge difference in certain communities that are just averse to even thinking about brain health. And so with an investor hat on and an entrepreneurial hat on, I'm just excited to see folks that are trying to pioneer new ways to redesign mental health, rename it, develop new interventions, new ways of assessments. So that's just another area.
Ariel?
Yeah, I mean, to simplify, most of the projects I see fall into two categories. Some are way out there, 10-year plus horizons. You see companies like Neuralink or Kernel, particularly the companies are going after understanding the brain, communicating with the brain. And I think it's super important to go in knowing that it's going to take a really, really long time. On the other type of projects are those where I think Neosensor is a great example where we can use haptics to replace that sense. We don't know exactly how it works, but we don't have to know. We just know it works. And so there's a lot of technologies that and projects that I see that they just have a great benefit. The benefit, we can take advantage of it right away. It's going to be a lot longer before we understand it, but that's okay, as long as we can get the benefit out of it. So I would say either you focus just on those, or you go in with a very, very long time horizon. I do both.
So I know that no one has the ability to foresee the future, but the fool. I don't know when would what happen, but I know certain trends. So technology will continue being enhanced. Thus, we are going to be more stressed, suffer more anxiety, more depression, more everything, right? So any product that can enhance human resilience should do very well. I think that, and again, we are not investing in medicine whatsoever. We are investing in products for generally healthy people. But I think that medicine really lacks behind all the personalization. Okay, so we can personalize our car and definitely clothing and everything, but once we enter the physician's office, we're just like very generalized. So any product that could really be personalized, and it could be starting from personal medicine or personal probiotics or personal anything, I think that would be a gigantic market. And obviously, I'm not objective, so I think that the neuro wellness market, which is ill-defined today, which will be a gigantic market in the future.
Yeah, I think so too. I know I've spoken to each of you about, I really do believe that the book Homo Deus, has everyone here read Homo Deus? Yeah. I think it really lays out a very interesting set of questions about what's next. But I do think that the next generation of massive companies will be the ones that help humanity deal with our minds and our psychology. And that ties to everything from the emotion and pattern recognition that's going to go into IoT to like everything that can touch our self-awareness and our ability to connect to one another. And I'm actually going to talk all about this in my talk, so I won't do it now. I would love to hear about your personal practices. This is a community where personal practice is, very interesting. So I'd love to hear about your personal practices and also what you look for in entrepreneurs as it relates to sort of like their, emotional, mental, spiritual maturity. Take it away. You're going to go first.
I mean, I can start again and tell you, personal practice for me has been an imperfect but practice around mindfulness and meditation that really started with a gift from my co-founder, Ev Williams. When we first started Obvious Ventures, we incubated it inside the office of his new company, Medium, that hopefully many of you have consumed thoughtful pieces or maybe authored thoughtful pieces on. But in that office, we had the unbelievable good fortune to have, number one, a dedicated meditation room. Number two, we had 3 days a week, Will Kabat-Zinn, son of John Kabat-Zinn, to come in and basically lead a guided meditation. And so we would sit regularly 3 days a week. And that, I think, was enlightened business on Ev's part to realize that if you can, from an employer point of view, use mindfulness as a practice to remove a lot of irrational anxiety that gets in the way of people really focusing on the mission and the purpose and the objectives of the business, everybody wins. But it was definitely a personal transformation for me. And in terms of what I look for in entrepreneurs, maybe the simplest way I can describe it is that I sit in a lot of pitch meetings. Last year, 2016, my firm looked at 1,100 investment opportunities, and we invested in 10. To give you the worst part of my job is saying no. But one of the fundamental questions I ask entrepreneurs is why? Why are you doing this business? And this room probably gets that question, but you'd be shocked at the percentage of entrepreneurs that are tongue-tied and don't have an answer to the why. They want to talk about the what and how they're going to make money and what the product is, but I really look for the why. What is that mission and purpose that is driving why they're going to do this?
All right.
I don't have an exotic meditation practice. I probably need to come hang out with you some more.
Come sit with me.
It's mostly fitness for me, and getting out in nature. I have a pretty good routine, and that drives it. And I think it's also driven me to think about, and keep my eyes open for innovation in that world. For folks that are not regular meditators or good meditators, which, not making excuses, I definitely need to be better. But technologies or tools or practices that can enhance what I'm doing right now, which feels kind of like makeshift around my fitness regime. I also spend a lot of time in nature. I think that's my thing. Yeah.
What do you look for in entrepreneurs?
It's all resilience. I've started 3 companies now, and they've been really hard, and so I'm trying to find out folks that know how to react to failure and can sort of remove that evil roommate that we all have in our brain and be able to tell themselves to keep going. I'd say that's probably that beats out everything. Beats out intelligence for me. It beats out an understanding of what they're going to do business model wise. If I feel like the person ultimately will figure it out and they're resilient, I get excited about working with them.
Cool. Ariel?
So in terms of what I look for, I would say that I try to focus on entrepreneurs who, one way of putting it is that would do what they're doing even if they knew that the project was going to fail, in the sense that it's about the journey. And for me, that's so important because most of these projects do fail. But if you're doing it because you're passionate about it, it ends up being a win-win. Either it did well or it didn't, but you still got something out of it. And by the way, failure is a relative term in the sense that you learned, you met people, you were in a better place to do something else. And one way in which I measure, because I don't think you can ask that, I find that if you just ask, when I meet an initial team, at the end of that first meeting, one of the key questions I ask myself is that, was that fun? Did I enjoy the time with them? And that tends to be a good reflection of their energy and their motivation. And if I didn't have a good time, that's the end of that, if you will, interaction. If I had a good time, then I'll go and look, okay, what are the other criteria? In terms of my personal practice, if you will, I think I'm very fortunate in that I got very addicted to kite foiling, which is kite surfing on a foil above the water. And one of the great things about that is that you have to be all in. If you start thinking about something else, you wipe out. And we go pretty fast. So it's become a great way for me. When I'm doing that, it makes it easy for me not to get rid of all thoughts, because otherwise
The only VC that can publicly say that he is high as a kite.
I am not a VC. That's why I can say it. I'm my own boss. And it's out in nature, and being out in the Chrissy field most days doing that, it really, I feel, keeps me sane. And then the other thing I try to do is every morning, after my kids go to school, I try to have a little bit of time for myself when I don't have a meeting, I don't have to do anything. It's just time for myself. It's not a lot of time, it's 20 minutes, but that's key for me.
So first of all, I will admit that the shoemaker walks barefoot, right? And I know a lot of theories, and I practiced a lot. I mean, starting with yoga and ending with meditation. And I think I take care of my nutrition, and I revise my sleeping habits to sleep at least 6 hours. But it's obviously not enough. I'm all the time looking for shortcuts, okay, to cut my meditation to less time. And this is why it's so interesting for me to find these technologies that are scientifically proven. I mountain bike. I love being in nature. I feel like really connected, whether it's an ancient forest or it's on the beach. I would try to do like my team meetings on the beach. Our office is not far away. But obviously I don't practice enough and I work too much. This is me personally. All my employees, I take very, very good care. I push them to go home at an early hour. I really take care of their well-being. It's only me that I push. On entrepreneurs, I fully agree with resilience. I think that the difference between a successful and unsuccessful company many times is the ability of the entrepreneur to be resilient enough to pass through and I can even testify it personally. I believe in people, so the first thing that I would look for is being able to develop trust and communication, because I would like my CEO to update me early on and share issues. And I all the time, I share the mistakes that I do in hope that others would do it too, because it's human to make mistakes, and we need to realize that and set corrective measures early on and not continue. So on one hand, the entrepreneur has to be extremely stubborn and to hear lots of no and to bash his head through the wall. On the other hand, they need to be open and flexible to realize that there's a door and they need to revise the plan, right? So it's like it's almost impossible. So eventually you invest in people. The business plan will change, the product will change in a successful company. But if you don't have the trust and communication, then it will probably fail. I need to find, I will not invest in companies or entrepreneurs that we cannot add value. We are looking not just to inject funding, but to make a significant difference in the path to success. Okay, that's critical for me.
I was just going to say one thing I've started to do over the past year. It's kind of nerdy, but I'd encourage others to do it. People have these walking desks, I was like, why don't people just walk outside? So I take one day, and I just do all my work while I'm walking. I end up walking, 15 miles or something. And if I have meetings, I'll ask people to meet me in certain places and walk with me. And, with Siri, I'm writing great emails, and I'm composing as if I was behind my computer, but it's become part of my routine, and I love it. So do that.
That's great. So we're going to take just a few questions, and please keep them brief, and then we'll do like 1 or 2 questions. Okay, sure.
My name is Ken Johnson, San Francisco. I want to help save my community, stop the violence, and change the mindset of my community, to be more positive through television programming. I'm a TV producer, and I know what it did for me, because I was a hard-head at one time till I got involved. And it really inspires. It's so many avenues that can be taken from television production. You got camera people, you got writers. And the question is, would any of you be interested in looking at a proposal or a proposal I have to look at possibly helping us out?
The that's interesting. It would be I guess you guys have kind of described what sort of things that you're looking at, and then I can get information for you later. So questions about types of companies, words to the wise for entrepreneurs, that type of thing. You had a question already. I can wait. Okay. Oh, hi.
I applaud you, by the way, for your efforts, and I do think that while we don't invest in like production companies, the idea that you're going to use content to inspire a community to do great things and have positivity is fantastic, and I'd be happy to chat with you about it.
And I would say check out patreon.com. There's one of many websites where you can actually crowdfund creative, world-positive projects like that.
Hi. I'm curious what kinds of issues you guys tend to see in companies in this space. So just briefly, one thing I've noticed is that, first of all, it's kind of a niche interest, but the issue is that the mainstream just doesn't know that they're interested in this, and they kind of need that bridge, right, to be really like clear. This is the problem, and this is what you need. I've noticed with many companies over the years, even in this conference, to just be able to explain, like, what's my product, what does it do, how do you use it? I'm kind of curious, like, what are the issues that these companies tend to have? How do you help them really get out into the mainstream? And yeah, just what support is available, and what have you seen as really big wins?
I think one thing I see frequently when I would encourage entrepreneurs is very often the product is the least important part of the company, and in the sense that how do you communicate it? How do you get it out there? What are the unit economics? What's the demand for it? There's so many other aspects. So one common thing I see in this space is I might get a pitch that's 80% product, and everything else is not there. And particularly for investors, we're not buying the product. We're investing in a company, in a team, in a model. And so I would super encourage people in this space to make sure that they're looking at all those aspects. And if there's a hole, it's like, well, I have this great product, but I don't know how I'm going to market it. To go and ask and figure it out, and as opposed to go with that as a whole. And if anybody, I have a website that I can recommend. If you go to bestofangel.com, there's some little videos from some experts in Silicon Valley that talk about each one of those aspects in just 30 seconds and how to cover them. So that would be a good resource.
I am dying to answer your question. Two quick things that I wanted to share. One is a problem that I think is beyond the categories we invest in, but I've seen just universally with startups, is to oversimplify it, the idea of focus. And the line that I share with young entrepreneurs is that most startups die of indigestion, not starvation. And again, that has served me well over the years, that it's really, really hard to decide what you're not going to do this week or this month as a startup. And then to the second part of your question, an example of something that's worked well. A company that I've been fortunate to be an early investor in is a company called Beyond Meat. And the mission of the company is to create delicious plant-based protein as an alternative to eating animals. And the real breakthrough success for this company was meeting the customer where they are. And what the very obstinate CEO did at this company is he said, first of all, he kept iterating on the product to just make it better and better, and to the point where we have this Beyond Burger that looks like ground beef. It pops, sizzles, sears on the grill, cooks like a burger. And he insisted to his retail partners that they sell it in the meat section, which is completely counterintuitive to every other alternative protein that's in the tofurkey vegan section. And he turned away supermarkets that wouldn't take his product and put it in the meat section. And that that simple idea has transformed the business, and that Beyond Burger is now, they can't keep it in stock, and it's a breakout, crazy success story because he figured out how to go, who his customer was. He was going after the meat eater and where to meet them in the store.
So I would say that since I consider the neuro wellness to be extremely unripe, and since I learned that it's very difficult to push, the market has its own dynamics, the one thing that I would insist is that the product would have a phenomenal user experience, okay? This is one. God forbid if you need to read instructions or if you need to develop a new habit or to take extra time, that's a failure. The biggest component the biggest expense for a company is the sales and marketing. So I want to reduce the market education to the highest level possible. B, I heard a different saying once. A company dies, no company dies because it's starved. Okay, so not knowing when the market will really open, the window of opportunity, and knowing that this company could be very successful, I would maintain it on a relatively low flame up to the point that the window of opportunity will open, okay? I will not assume that I have the ability to revise or influence market dynamics. That's it.
Thanks. Hi, my name is Veronica, and I run a company called The Cocoon. So I'm really happy to hear everything that you guys just said. It makes me really happy that that's how you view things. A question for all entrepreneurs out there, and one that I personally struggle with. When coming into a meeting with you and knowing things that, my valuation might be relevant today, might not be relevant tomorrow, my product could change because the market changes, how do I balance the things that you actually look for with, so going into the background, what we make is really important, and we're really all about that, but how we make it is as equally important. And one of my struggles is how in a pitch to you guys, or in generally just pitching, where do I strike the balance of this is our product, but these are processes, and these are other added values?
So if I can answer a generic question, is it okay that I'm first this time? It's a scientifically validated method. Use your intuition, right? You look at the person, you look in their eyes, and you monitor their interests, and you try to define whether they're the logical type or emotional type. Before that, you do your homework, and you learn about these guys, what do they care for, okay? And you cater to their needs. And it's all about reaching some emotional bonding, because otherwise they will lose attention in no time. If someone picks up the phone and starts going through emails, the meeting is over, right? So you have a very short amount of time to capture their attention. Most of us are too busy ADDs, right? So use your emotions, really. Use your intuition.
If I can add
Sorry that I'm not referring to this valuation or that valuation. I think it makes no sense. I'm sorry, okay?
I was going to add that if there's some aspects of your business that are particularly important to you, ideally you're targeting investors who are compatible. I think one of the biggest mistakes entrepreneurs do is they just go, let me go after the usual suspects. But fit, it's like when you're dating. You might agonize over French food or Italian food, this one or that one. If there's no chemistry, it doesn't matter, right? And if there is chemistry, it doesn't matter for the opposite reason. So investors, it's the same thing. If you pick correctly and you do a lot of homework and you're targeting someone who, because of what he or she tweeted or blogged or invested or have done or said in a conference, gives you an indication, oh, they really care about the processes like we care about, you're 80% of the way there.
Cool. Okay, we have one more question, and then we're...
So I think we can all agree that the world will change a lot in the next 5, 10, 20 years. And when we start talking about consciousness, we start thinking about what is actually humanity. So I'm curious, as we approach the concept of the singularity, whether you agree with it or not, what do you see as the role and the evolution of humanity in the coming years? How far can your imagination go?
All right. Hame?
No, I'm not
Yes.
tackle that, James.
James.
Wow.
I think it's really fun to think, 5, 10, 20, 50 years out. And I think one of the things that we don't talk about publicly a lot at Obvious Ventures, we talk about world positive venture capital, and that's where we're starting. But we have this, what we call our BHAG, our big, hairy, audacious goal, which is we think the entire notion of capitalism needs to be reimagined and redesigned. And there's so many pieces of the financial stack where that can happen. And we're trying to prove it first in venture capital. But when you really zoom out, you have to start asking questions like, why do we have this shared hallucination called currency, that we believe these pieces of paper have value that we exchange? How will that be transformed with cryptocurrencies? How will quantum computing change and break cryptocurrencies? And so when you really zoom out, you start to question, what is the role of capitalism, of entrepreneurship, of business? And hopefully we can distill it down to this kernel of light, that it's about helping humanity and creating positive change for everyone.
Excellent. That was very well done. That was great. To a very hard question. Great. Well, thank you guys so much. Unless one of you wants to jump in on that, but all right. Thank you so much, everyone. Let's give them a round of applause. Thank you.